What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. We hope you're good. Sorry if my voice sounds a little bit scratchy. I sneezed twice and now my throat has destroyed itself. But we're going to talk about something fucking fun tonight. And before we get started, Mike, I got to ask you, doing research for this was a little bit difficult. We're going to talk about, in a sense, and not just, but werewolves. And when I started looking into this, I found Google actually redirecting me towards just wolf attacks or dogman stuff. And I couldn't find anything looking up werewolf, but I was sure able to find shit looking up dogman. Do you like this new moniker that werewolves had? To me, it's like the chupacabras thing. It to me, when it turned into a dog with mange, I was like, what? Why are you doing this?
Well, to me, a werewolf is a very specific thing. It's a person who turns into a wolf and is able to turn back to a person. To me, that's what a werewolf is.
Would you say that's done by magic? Because it's a curse, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it would definitely be magic. Of course it's magic.
Okay.
To me, if it's a creature that's a bipedal wolf man sort of thing like that, we're dealing with something completely different. To me, there's dogman, but then there's also people like to lump in skinwalker. Skinwalker's the new cool thing now. Any sort of creature like this. Oh, it's definitely the skinwalker, and it's not. It's not the skinwalker. The skinwalker is I would say closer to a werewolf, except a voluntary werewolf rather than a cursed werewolf, where they're able to control the transformation. The dogman is or a wolf man, however, I feel like they call it dogman just because wolf man has the connotation with werewolf. So you say wolf man and instantly people are thinking Lon Chaney Jr.
Right.
But if you say dogman and then describe it as being a werewolf, people are like, oh, this is something different now. Because I mean, let's be real. You're not out there seeing a bipedal golden retriever. That would be ridiculous. Think this big burly body, like a Bigfoot body, and then a stupid golden retriever head on it. That would be so silly, and no one would be afraid of it ever. It would just be like a Rick and Morty character or something.
Right. I guess the distinction's good because we're not dealing with somebody who has a curse and has to wear an amulet to keep his transformation suppressed, or it only happens on full moons.
Yeah. Or he made a pact with the devil and the devil gave him a belt that he wears anytime he wants to turn into a werewolf. No, unfortunately, I would love it if that was the case. If we actually had real werewolves that were able to cast a werewolfy spell and roam the countryside. That would be kind of neat, because then it's within your grasp. You can, if you want to become a werewolf, all you got to do is do the right little trick and you too can become a werewolf, and then, start a werewolf gang and then roam the countrysides as a pack of werewolves. And that's pretty awesome. But traditionally in werewolf lore, if you were a werewolf, you were actually turning into a wolf. You weren't turning into a wolf man. You weren't a hybrid. You were turning into a wolf, usually a large wolf, but you were a wolf, running on all fours, being wolfy, doing wolfy things. You didn't have big human hands that ended with claws. You weren't walking around on two legs. So that's more of a modern take on the legend. And I think this dogman, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is something else. And I don't know what it is. I kind of feel like if it's something that's real, I don't feel like it's likely to be a natural part of our world. I think it's something like a Bigfoot sort of thing where it's in our world, but not necessarily a part of our world naturally.
Right. But then again, it could be. I mean, if we're going to be super distinct here, I mean, I have to say that what we're going to talk about might not be a werewolf then. But when we've covered like the dog-headed men before. And in doing research for that stuff, you can go back and read writings on like almost every culture that has mentionings of tribes of people with the head of dogs, but they're walking upright and stuff.
Yeah, what a Cynocephali?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
I remember reading a writing from China, and there's an island off their coast, and they're like, yeah, you don't go there. That's where the dog people are. They're cool. They'll come over here to trade, but we don't go over there to trade with them. We don't fuck around.
They're savages.
They'll bite your ankles.
Or your throat and rip it out where you stand.
Yeah. But I see even like the drawings of those, they almost have like a normal human's body, but just the head of a dog. But then I've seen some where like the French engravings to where they're just walking around on two legs, but they're a dog. Maybe it's somebody who, I mean, anybody who's going to draw a werewolf or a dogman has, werewolf from Werewolf in London and Underworld to thank for visualizations on recreating a werewolf. But maybe in 1410, that's the best they could do.
And I mean, look at when you're even looking at creatures that are commonplace, like some of those. You ever look at
illustrations
illustrations of medieval cats? And how fucking wacky those things look.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is attributed to the style at the time as well, like how they're being depicted.
Yeah, I remember when we covered the bestiary stuff, I came across some drawings of an oyster, and it was just almost demonic looking. And I'm like, I know these people have seen a fucking oyster. I know they've eaten one. It doesn't look like this, and they know it. Right.
Yeah, yeah. What were you thinking, man?
Just the stylization of the time. So what are we going to talk about if we're going to be so specific, it might not be a werewolf or a dogman. What are we going to get into?
We are going to get into the sinister idea that perhaps the United States government is covering up the existence of killer dog people.
Ooh, we can go a lot of ways with this. And some of the ways we can go with this meet up with each other in the end.
Yeah, but let's be real. The only explanation that makes sense is that the government is actively covering up killer dog people attacks. It's the only one. I will not hear any hearsay or contradictory statements. We are proceeding with the fact, I repeat, the fact that the United States government is actively covering up murderous dog people.
You know, at this day and age, it not only wouldn't it shock me or surprise me, it's that after looking into like the missing 411 stuff and other things we've covered on this show, other cases, it almost has to be the case. And it's like almost like they have places designated for these things to live that are closely watched. And I don't know, Mike, I haven't been camping too much, but a lot of these places you got to check in and identify yourself so they know who's going in and out of there. But they've got to be keeping some entity that's not normal at some of these locations that just make people disappear.
Or maybe they're not being disappeared. Maybe they're being eaten.
Yeah.
Or just murdered and left in the wilderness somewhere where only a dog man would know.
Right. Maybe he stashes his food in a place we wouldn't think of.
Yeah, he's like a leopard. You don't know. You're not a dog man.
And if you are and you're listening, welcome.
Yeah, yes. If you are a dog man and you're listening to this, I take back my previous statement calling you all savages. You're probably a lovely human being. And also, if you are a werewolf or a skinwalker, then, teach me your tricks, because I want to roam the countryside too, man.
Yeah, savage is actually a retro way of saying something's cool.
Yes, that's exactly. Or if you are one of those guys where savage is like a good thing, like who is it? The one of the Paul brothers, isn't savage like his thing?
Probably, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I've only seen him through wrestling, so I really don't know much about him, but I thought he had a savage thing or something. I don't know, man. I'm fucking old. But ultimately, the bottom line is, if you are a dog man, I take back the savage comment. But if there's no dog men listening, they're fucking savages, guys. Murderous savages that are just bloodthirsty, and they want to eat your babies and also your face.
Right. I've always loved depictions in movies when they show fanciful stuff, and it kind of would be the way it is if it was real. Like if there were dogmen and werewolves, the underworld would kind of be it. They'd be like a devastating creature, man.
Yeah, you gotta keep them hidden. Maybe that's like part of the thing. So think about the conspiracy theory where Eisenhower was working with aliens and allowing them to abduct us in exchange for technology. So we're all aware of that. What if early on in the history of the United States, maybe even George fucking Washington himself, who knows who the president was at the time when this deal happened, but he made a deal with a native tribe of dogmen because they at one point coexisted with mankind, but then when we started our westward expansion of the United States and started displacing the natives, the treaty broke down, and the dogmen joined the natives in attacking us. So the only way to broker peace between our faction and the dogmen, and maybe even turning the dogmen against the native, maybe that's what turned the tide of the war. Maybe it wasn't technology, maybe it was dogmen.
Ooh.
Anyway, we made a treaty with them where we told them, no matter where we go, we will found these things called national parks. And these national parks, they're essentially acting as like a reservation for these tribes of dogmen. And in these parks, their existence is kept a secret, and that's part of the deal. They're like, hey, you'll have free reign to hunt in these parks as much as you want. You just have to stay secret, because if the population finds out about you, they will hunt you and kill you. And they're smart enough to realize that. And so now that they are allowed to hunt in these national parks, however they deem necessary, they, typically will live off the animals there, but occasionally they get a taste for humans, and they're like, hey, you know what? Some human kebab would be real fucking good right now. So they go take down a dude who's hiking through the woods, or steal a kid and snack on them for a week or two, and then, go about their regular business. Nobody finds the bodies. Nobody knows what happens. And it becomes this great mystery. Nobody knows. But occasionally, there's a body that's found.
We joke about this a lot, and I honestly believe something like that is what's happening. I mean, just think about it. We wouldn't even have to be so far-fetched, and not that dogmen eating people is far-fetched, but we wouldn't even have to go as bizarre.
No, as I established earlier, Mateo, that this is a fact. This is a fact that dogmen are murderous and being covered up by the United States government. Fact.
Well, what if these dogmen tribes had this treaty with the government and this understanding? You tell them, we'll give you 50 acres. They go, cool. You put that 50 acres in the center of a fucking 100,000 acres, or a place where people have to check in and identify themselves, and they're cataloged as when they leave and stuff like that. If people happen to stumble on these dog tribes, just imagine that dog person, tribe member, knows good and well they have to stay hidden. They probably believe they can't let you leave. They probably believe they have to kill you then. And then if something like that's actually being implemented, just imagine fucking we'll call them black rangers, like the park rangers that are not really park rangers, that are just like, you saw what? And then boom, boom, those people disappear.
The rangers in black.
Yeah, exactly. And those people disappear, and they just go, we don't know. I mean, Jesus Christ, they got almost double the signatures they need so that these parks would compile the names and cases of people who've gone missing, and they still said no.
Yeah. Little bit fishy. And then sometimes they're not happy on the reservation, and they want to go fucking wander roads somewhere in fucking Michigan or Illinois or Kentucky. You know, they're just like, you know what, we're gonna break from the woods and just roam the suburbs, man.
Absolutely. With any conglomerate or group, there's going to be a rogue agent. There's going to be something or someone that goes against the grain, that wants a different life.
So let me spin you a little yarn here. All right. And I'm going to tell you a story of a victim who was killed by an animal.
There goes our YouTube monetization. Shit.
Yeah, you got to bleep killed.
And then probably animal now, right? Because people are sensitive to animals' feelings.
And also, when I called dogman savages, you'll have to beep that because we need to be mindful of the feelings of potential dogmen that may stumble across this. So, well, we're not making any money from YouTube.
There goes 32 cents.
There goes all my millions of dollars that I was making in YouTube dollars. And now it's all gone because I want to talk about Dogman. Fuck.
And we're not going to say unalived. Sorry. It's not going to.
No, I will never say unalived. It's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever. Can I just talk about this for a second here? Because this is something that pisses me off more than fucking anything. When they've got to fucking bleep the word suicide, when they have to bleep murder and call things unalive. Like, are we really that fucked up as a society that we're going to be triggered by the word murder? You know, murder that fucking we hear about on the news constantly. You know, we've got people doing mass shootings, but oh fuck, some YouTuber said murder. Can't make any money off that video now because he said murder. Fuck off. All right. I'm sorry. I just had to. It pisses me off anytime I see unalived. I'm just like, you fucking pussy.
It's absolutely insane. I mean, even people who I watch on YouTube that cover true crime. I mean, the subject's true crime and they got to say unalive.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
It's insane.
It's so fucked up. Like, who's clicking on true crime videos and they're going to be like, I'm triggered because they use murder. Oh my God. You clicked on it, you motherfucker.
It's insane the amount of censorship that's happening at YouTube.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Anyway,
let's talk about murder.
Yes, I've got a story here of a gentleman who was killed by something, and his wounds did not match any known animal. So let's start from the beginning. This guy's name was Christopher Whiteley, and he's got a bit of a rough backstory. He was addicted to methamphetamines. He spent a lot of his adult life in prison. He never learned how to drive, and he finally got out of prison. He's 28 years old now, and he is trying to kick his addiction to meth and get his life back on track. So he started working full time, and on the morning of December 2nd in 2020, he was planning to hitchhike to work because he still had not yet learned to drive, being, he had been in prison and a meth addict. So, that's not who needs to drive when you're in prison or high on meth. So he's trying to get to work, and what he would do is hitchhike to work. So he leaves his girlfriend's house at 9 a.m. and he's got a backpack that he brings to work with him. It's a blue and white backpack. And he left his girlfriend's house and started walking through this patch of woods behind the house to get to Howell Road, which was the road behind his girlfriend's house, where he would then proceed to try to thumb a ride. He never made it to work that day and didn't come home after work. So the next day, a missing persons report was filed, and they started looking for him. And that evening, just as the sun was setting, they were searching the area between his girlfriend's house and Howell Road, this wooded area. And they first spotted his backpack that was on the ground, leaned up against a cedar tree. And then after searching the area, they found his body in these bushes that the deputy who found him said the bushes were so dense that it was a miracle we found him. And they weren't clear if he had crawled under the bushes or if he had fallen into the bushes, but he was like in among these bushes in this wooded area. So they called in the Hood County Justice of the Peace. Her name was Catherine Gwynn, and she arrived on the scene to determine the cause of death. And when she was examining the body, she found that, one, he had no shirt on. Now, this was Texas in December, but they confirmed that the weather would not have been warm enough to warrant walking out without a shirt on. And his pants, his boxer shorts, were kind of pulled through the fly.
What the fuck?
And on his chest, arms, and face, he had thin scratches. They weren't like deep wounds. They were more like just to the surface, but they were scratches all over him. And then his throat from under one ear to the other ear had been torn open and torn out. And based on the blood that they found at the scene, they were able to determine that his throat was torn out while he was standing up.
While he was standing up?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So he had, at that point, after looking at it, they made a quick reaction, and in the newspaper they ran a headline on December 4th saying, "Mountain lion attack leaves man dead." Now, that might sound plausible, at least on the surface, with no other explanation. Sure, that sounds right. But one, in all of human history, there have been 30 reported cases of fatalities from a mountain lion attack in all of recorded history.
Holy shit.
So it's not likely to happen. There's never been a reported mountain lion attack in this area. And there was a mountain lion sighting recently, but it was 20 miles away. So it wouldn't really warrant this. Also, the way that mountain lions attack, they don't tear out the throat. They're ambush predators. So what they would do is sneak up from behind and pounce, dig their claws into it, and bite the back of the neck typically. And what you'd find is 4 puncture marks on the neck from the canines. There would be very little blood. And what they do, the way that they kill their victims is when they bite, they cut off the flow of blood to the animal's brain. So they dig their claws in to hold it in place, bite down, cut off the flow of blood, and kill it that way. They're not ripping its throat out. And there was no evidence of claw marks digging in. Like if a cat were to attack, it would, I mean, you've seen most people have seen what a house cat's claw looks like. They're curved with a sharp point, and a mountain lion's claw is no different. It's just bigger. So if you had this thing latch onto you, you're going to have these deep puncture marks from these claws that dug into the person to hold them in place. You're not going to have all these little superficial scratches all over.
No, those scratches sound like they came from being drug into the brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always had a cat. Cat's claws do way more damage than superficial. Like a kitten can cause superficial scratches.
Right. Yeah. But the determination was basically like a preliminary. it was determined through the preliminary examinations on the corpse. So the person who was working in the coroner's office just made a guess, and then it sounded plausible, so everybody ran with it, and it got to be like, it even became a national headline, and there was even a publication in Great Britain that also even ran this story about a mountain lion killing a man, because this was the first time that Texas had ever had a fatal attack by a mountain lion.
Wow.
So this was like a huge story, and it was people were becoming worried, like maybe, we shouldn't be walking around the wilderness in this area. They had several officers and people from the Texas Wildlife Department out trying to find this mountain lion. Nothing was ever found, though. So they ended up calling in a guy named I think Britton Stuckey is his last name. It's either Stuckey or Stuckey. I'm going to say Stuckey. He was the Hood County game warden, and he was called into the scene the day after they found Whiteley's body. He said he looked over the entire area and he found no evidence of a mountain lion attack. He said all the usual signs from a mountain lion attack were absent. There were no prints. There was no scat left behind. There were no territorial scrapes, which is like where the lion would like scratch the ground and kick up the area. They usually would form small mounds of debris that they would then mark with urine to mark a kill site so they could come back later. None of this was there at all.
And this is a game warden saying this?
Correct.
Wow, okay.
And then they took photos at the scene and they showed them to the resident mammologist for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Jonah Evans. He looked through everything, and based on what he saw and everything, he said there's no way that a mountain lion killed him. And then he started pointing out the fact that the canine teeth, there's no marks from a canine teeth in the neck. Typically, if a mountain lion was feeding on something, it would have removed organs from the abdomen. That didn't happen. He basically completely ruled this out. And he said, based on the soil, if there was a mountain lion, it would have left tracks because of the way that it was like a sandy soil that would have been prone to leaving an imprint.
And if this is a mountain lion that's taken an adult dude out, it's not going to be a baby one either. It's going to leave tracks.
Yep. So they ended up going back out, and they were worried that in the initial investigation that a potential crime scene may have been contaminated. So it took them a while to send out some biologists to visit the site, but they were able to get people out there on December 5th, which was 2 days after Whiteley's body was found. And they were joined by this guy named Mike Budenchuk. And he was an experienced mountain lion trapper that worked for, he was actually the director of wildlife services in Texas. So he's got experience hunting and trapping mountain lion, and he's the director of the wildlife service of the state of Texas.
Holy shit, dude. The officials in this case are starting to trip me out.
Yeah. And he basically reports to the Secretary of Agriculture in the U.S. federal government. But he went and he looked at the area where the deputies recovered his body, and then he worked his way outward from there and was examining the whole area. And he said within 150 yards of where the body was found, he found tracks from a coyote, deer, wild hogs, house cats, and in 2 locations he found tracks from a mid-sized dog, like a, your standard family dog. And he concluded all of these were made 2 to 3 days apart, and there was no sign at all that a mountain lion had ever come through.
Yikes.
So the police department was still 100% convinced that this was a mountain lion attack. So 2 days after they did this examination of the area, he actually walked into the medical examiner's office in Fort Worth, Texas, carrying a mountain lion's skull so that he could show to the medical examiners what the skull looked like and the damage it would have done, how it would have, reacted to a human's throat and all of this, and explain the way that they hunt. And so showing the jaw structure, the jaw itself wouldn't have been able to do the damage to his throat that was done. Like I said, it was literally torn. His throat was torn out from ear to ear, and it wouldn't have been able to do that. Typically, when a mountain lion hunts for something as well, it'll come back within a couple hours after the kill to eat. And they didn't find him for a full day. And the other interesting thing about this case that kind of, at least in my opinion, rules out a mountain lion attack is the fact that his backpack was taken off. It wasn't on his body. It wasn't ripped off. It was taken off and left under a tree.
What do you think that means?
That he would have taken it off for something, for some reason. Like if you get your throat slashed or ripped out or whatever, you're not going to then put your backpack down, and there's no sign that anything was stolen either. So it's not like he was robbed.
Wow. This is what a strange case, man. I mean,
yeah,
you're leaving me with nowhere else to go other than some type of dogman attack.
So Bodenchuk and Stuckey, when they were going through this, they determined, based on the way his body was found, that it was more likely that his body fell into the brush when, that he had his throat ripped out and then fell into the brush. And that's where they found him, and he bled out in the brush. But there was no evidence of anything coming back to feed on him afterwards. So it doesn't make sense. Like, why would an animal kill him and then just leave and never come back? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So they did all agree that it was very likely that an animal was responsible for this, but it was absolutely not a lion. And Bodenchuk himself wanted to see if he could examine Whiteley's trachea, which had been removed by the medical examiner's office, but he was unable to get access to it to offer any further analysis. So finally, over a month after, on January 25th, the final autopsy report came into the sheriff's office, and the coroner ruled the death to be an accident, and the cause of death was injuries of the neck due to an animal attack. There was no longer, in the official final report, there was no reference to the mountain lion. It just says injuries of the neck due to an animal attack. And then they released a press release saying that they agreed with the medical examiner's conclusion and there were no other signs of foul play in his death. But the cops in the case said that while they do accept the medical examiner's determination, they still believe that it was a mountain lion that killed him.
The police officers think that?
Yeah.
They ever watch Animal Planet?
Well, they also, the reason that they say this is because the people that came in with experience on the attacks, or on mountain lion attacks, don't have any firsthand experience investigating attacks on humans. They've never seen a human kill, so they don't know how that would be. But there is a trapper from New Mexico who has investigated a mountain lion attack on a human, and his name's Jim Vaught, and he weighed in on this, spoke to the medical examiner, and also said, based on all of this, this was 100% not a mountain lion.
Kind of put yourself in a corner there.
Yeah. So what they think happened is that upon first seeing him, the deputies were like, oh, this is clearly a mountain lion attack, and then just stuck with that story, not willing to hear anything else. But everything does indicate that it was a large animal. The thing is, this would be more something that would be like that more closely resembles a dog attack. A lot of times the clothes will get ripped off in a dog attack. And there's a lot of times when the boxers in like a fatal dog attack or even like a regular attack, they'll for some reason they try to pull the clothes off. So it's like if there's another layer of clothes on under your clothes, they'll try to rip that through your like in this case with his boxers being partially torn out of his pants. But they did some tests on his body. They did DNA testing on his fingernails to see if he had any traces under his fingernails of any sort of animal. They did find some hairs on his body. They found 2 hairs. They tested them and they were dog hairs. But the cops in this case said that it was hair from his girlfriend's dog. Only thing is, his girlfriend doesn't have a dog. So that's not the case.
And they're saying it's from her dog. That's their official word.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
well now they've just basically admitted to covering this up.
And they're saying they ruled out that it was a dog as well, because for one, if a dog was going to attack someone, it would have to attack their arms or their legs to get them down. And there's no defensive marks on the body. There's no marks showing that he was bit on the arm and pulled down. And like I said, again, his throat was ripped out while he was standing up.
Right. So that wouldn't make sense at all.
Yeah. And then while the investigation was still going, before they were able to even, like, this is while the preliminary investigation was still taking place, where they were saying it was a mountain lion, the coroner's office completely cleaned the body, which would remove all evidence. And they cleaned it using bleach.
Bleach?
So, yeah, removing any sort of evidence that might be on the body or any DNA that they might be able to pull from the wound or anything. Washed it completely clean.
You know, I've studied some things that are cover-ups that ended up being proven to be cover-ups, some things that they're still trying to figure out. And this sounds like a cover-up. There's so much going against what they're saying.
Yeah, it just seems like the fact that they are just holding on to the mountain lion thing, and the fact that they washed the body while the preliminary investigation was still taking place seems pretty weird, you know, especially if it could have potentially been a murder. You know, like the preliminary investigation said it was a animal attack, but it was still ongoing. And before they definitively determined that, they were washing the body, which would get rid of any evidence.
That's just weird. I mean, that's somebody's kid. That's somebody's...
Yeah. And to this day, the case is closed and determined to have been an attack by an unknown animal. But no animal was ever found in the area that would be big enough to do this.
Now, I know it would probably take something like on a level of reaching out, but do we know what his family's saying? Are they just taking this?
His mother believes that he was murdered by a person, that somebody murdered him.
Do you think his boxers being pulled through his fly could be some type of symbol?
I don't know.
Maybe his girlfriend had a boyfriend?
Yeah, I mean, but what tore his throat out? Like, it wasn't slashed, it was torn out.
Yeah, and that's got to be something huge, man. If you pull up a mountain lion and have it stand next to you without attacking you, that's a big fucking cat, and that's not going to do the job. I mean, I'm kind of shocked. There's more. I mean, no matter how hard it's to believe, I always try to look at whatever evidence is presented, and there's more evidence to this being a dogman attack than anything. To close the case, to wash the body, none of that makes sense. To say the hairs came from his girlfriend's dog, and then she not having a dog, and they're like, well, cool, that doesn't matter anyway because of it.
Right.
They're all sorry it came from my dog.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know.
I got to ask, because this is gnarly. I mean, where did you come across this story? This took place in 2022?
2020.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's still rather recent for something like this to be going on.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing about this case that I think is bullshit is there's people that read this case and, you know, like basically fucking armchair detectives that are just fucking idiots. But a lot of people are pointing to this being like, well, he was killed by another person who trained a pit bull to attack people's throats. And that's fucking bullshit. Because for one, I can tell you, as a former owner of a pit bull, they're definitely able to jump. 100%. They could, like, my dog was able to jump higher. You know, her head would jump over where my head was. Like she was able to fucking really jump. But you've got to determine, you gotta figure, for one, it's gonna have to jump at the perfect angle, turn its head, grab a person's throat, and then rip it out while it's hanging from his throat, and then fucking leave with the dude, and then this guy jumps into the bushes and bleeds out. Like that's like some movie shit, you know? Like that's not how it's going to happen in real life. Like the dude's not going to just stand there and be like, oh, there's a pit bull jumping at me. Let me stick my neck out so it can rip my throat out. No, he's going to throw his hands up.
Yeah, let me keep my arms completely at my side while this dog jumps at my throat.
Yeah. It's fucking silly. And I just hate when people demonize pit bulls because they're fucking strong.
Yeah, that's not good.
I mean, in and of itself, like it's more a mystery about what happened to him and why. But given the other stuff that we're about to talk about, maybe it was a dogman attack cover-up. Because as I said at the beginning of this episode, it is a fact that the United States government is complicit in covering up murderous dog people. Fact. So let's leave Texas for now. And let's head over to Kentucky, shall we? Because I want to talk about the fact that there's a murderous dogman group that's murdering people and other things in Kentucky. So have you ever heard of, previous to me telling you what we're talking about, have you ever heard of the Barilla?
You know, I've heard of so many cross things.
Yeah, I know. They all kind of run into each other.
Yeah, but a Barilla would have stood out because that's not like a bear squatch. We're talking bear gorilla.
Right. Yeah, well, and here's the thing. It's not even, it's a dogman. But one of the guys, there was someone who spotted it in the 70s that said to him it looked like a cross between an ape and a bear. So the media dubbed it the Barilla. But it's also been known as the Gateway Werewolf, the Wolf-Headed Bigfoot, and the Beast from the Land Between the Lakes.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's got a bunch of different names, but it's basically a fucking dogman, and this one is a murderer as well.
Sure is.
So, and it was first, the first, like, I guess, official, or at least the first recorded sighting was in 1944. There was a boy who was fishing in a creek that was near the Daniel Boone National Forest, which the Daniel Boone National Forest is well known for Bigfoot and dogman sightings. So, like, a lot of these sightings happen in the area around the Daniel Boone National Forest. But this boy was fishing in a creek when a large gray-silver bipedal creature with a wolf-like head lunged at him, and he stole the fish from his line, slashed the kid with his claws, and then walked away with the fish. And the boy said as this thing was walking away, it turned around and it smiled at him.
Ew.
And then just walked off into the woods. The boy actually had to get treated in the hospital for his wounds. And the local police at the time tried to cover up the story, but one of the nurses ended up leaking it. But there's no official documentation of this taking place. So it's more, kind of hearsay and urban legend at this point. This was kind of where things started. And then in the 70s, there was a group of college kids that saw him. And then the dude that I mentioned earlier that dubbed it the Barilla. But there's a long history of this thing in the area.
Yeah, there sure is. This area is it's crazy. It's a crazy fucking area. It borders Western Kentucky and Tennessee. It's over 170,000 acres. It has over 200 miles of walking trails and over 300 miles of shoreline. The stories of this unknown beast inhabiting the area started as soon as European settlers got to the area in the 1800s. The earliest of hunters report a gnarly howling sound from something that they've never heard before. And then from that, hunting parties started reported people going missing. And such as stories go, over the years, there have been hundreds and if not thousands of reported sightings of the beast. And that's pretty much how the legend of this creature was born. They go into, I saw a few things go into the Native American lore about the area, because there were Native Americans in the area when the settlers came, and the video I watched, they try to attribute it to a skinwalker, like you said, like everybody does. They mentioned the Wendigo. Did that come to mind at all?
No, but I hear the Wendigo. Like this is one of those things. Like you've got these different stories from different native tribes about killer things, and people just all of a sudden be like, oh, it's all the same fucking thing. The Wendigo is a spirit, man. It's not like a Bigfoot creature. It's not a giant emaciated deer man. It's a spirit, and it's not like I've seen dogman, skinwalkers, werewolves, and Wendigo all talked about as being the same thing. And it's so fucking dumb because they're all very different things.
Right. Well, in the late 1800s, some report that it was the early 1900s. Maybe it was from the late 1800s to the early 1900s. The people of the land between the lakes started to find the local buffalo dead and partially devoured. It was credited to the beast as all the buffalo, get this, Mike, were killed by seemingly a single bite to the throat.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's as far back as that goes, and pretty much from then on out, there's been reports of sightings, strange howls, people going missing, hunters going missing. But like you mentioned before, in 1973, students that attended the Murray University went on a camping trip in this area. And at night, they reported that they started to hear a large, very strange growl. And they heard a loud, that was followed by a very loud howl. Now, that alarmed them, and I'm sure them being from the area and where they're at, they've heard of the beast of land between the lakes. But that didn't stop them from pretty much leaving their tent and going outside. And that's kind of where most stories end. But like a fucking movie, dude, they exit the tent and they look and they see the silhouette of what they described as at least 7 feet tall shape of something that was what they described as being a cross between a Bigfoot and a wolf. Something that had more man-like cadences than like a arch-legged dog standing up or something like that. But they says as soon as they saw it, it moved towards them and into the moonlight, and they can just plainly see it. And it wasn't bothered by them. It howled again. And that was enough to get them to run the fuck out of there, which probably wasn't too smart. That thing could have caught any of them, but they reported that. There's some stories I've heard that one of the students happened to take a photo of the beast, but there's this weird fake photo that's accredited to being that photo. I think that's something that was added on later.
Yeah, probably. Most of that stuff is bullshit.
Yeah. And then there's another case that's attributed to the beast of land between the lakes that happened in 1982. Now, this story is told over and over again, and there's a couple places that say different dates. Some places resort to saying just the 80s, the early 80s. But I came across a couple cool YouTube videos that I'll put in the show notes of a young lady's channel to where she actually goes there and investigates the area. And she said that this story took place in 1982. And we'll talk about the area, Mike. They find some weird stuff. But in 1982, apparently there was an RV found in the area. And the RV was found to be basically torn apart. And some of the stories even said there was giant claw marks found on the inside of this RV. And the RV was owned by a family. It was a father, a mother, a daughter, and a son. And inside the RV was pretty much the mangled remains of the father, the mother, and the son. But what makes this weird and why the beast of LBL gets the credit for this is that the daughter's body was found, I think it was like 30 yards away up a tree.
Yeah, just dangling from one of the branches.
So I mean that's rough stuff.
No, I heard from a person who is local to the area, and apparently there is a variation of that story where they not only did they find the body in the tree, but when they got there, this thing was in the tree feeding on the body.
Really?
Yeah. And the entire thing was covered up. Like, you can't find anything. Like, it was never in the papers. It was never reported anywhere. It wasn't on the news. Nothing. It was completely covered up by the authorities. And the first responders that leaked the information claimed that people from the federal government, or at least representing themselves as being from the federal government, came in and told them that the entire thing had to be kept quiet.
Really?
Yeah. And one idea behind that is because this is a well-known it's Daniel Boone National Park, so it's kind of a tourist stop. And if there was reports of fatal animal attacks, people wouldn't want to come, especially if it was a monster attack. That's going to scare everybody off.
Now, do you know that the area is supposedly haunted as well?
Of course it is. Remember the Bigfoot is poltergeist thing? It's the same shit, man. Same shit.
Yeah, we might have some of that going on here. No kidding. In 1962, the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, purchased all the land, all this area, and basically kicked everybody off of it. And they had some people who tried to hold on to it and stuff like that. But only a year later, JFK declared it a national park. And that was in 63. And then we had all these terrible things happen at this place. So I was researching this. I watched the video of this lady exploring the area, and you can see these huge divots and concrete poured foundations and old stone foundations of where houses used to be. I mean, the whole place where this forest is basically on top of a place that was home to hundreds and hundreds of families. And they say that there was native burial grounds there. There was the European settler graves there. There was graves of soldiers there. And even notedly, a lot of graves of infants due to the mortality rate at the time.
Or maybe they're sacrifices to Dogman.
Maybe. When I wanted to look into covering this stuff, I thought of, shout out to Midnight in Kentucky. They had a great episode on this, and they had mentioned, and reading other things, any of the cryptozoologists who look into this case immediately call this a cover-up.
Interesting.
Yeah, so basically, to wrap everything up, I think there's clear evidence in these cases of a cover-up.
It sounds like the sightings are still happening too, and it's funny that you mentioned the earliest sighting or the earliest legends or whatever talking about ripping the throats out of buffalo, because in 2012 there was a spate of animal mutilations that were reported in the area as well, and there were livestock being found with their faces, ears, and tongues missing, and no blood on the scene.
Oh, wow. Okay, see, I came across that when I was doing research, and I was hoping you know something about that. That's a little bit weird. I mean, these are smaller animals. A dogman would just devour that, right?
I mean, well, some of them were cows, but cows, goats, and sheep, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's interesting that the people who saw it, the students, described it as being a cross between, or maybe a mix of, is a better way to say it, a mix of Bigfoot and a dogman, a werewolf.
Yeah. Right.
And the same thing with your bear gorilla thing. Maybe it's...
Yeah, bearilla.
Maybe it's the same entity.
Yeah, probably. I mean, think about it. Like, if it has a body like a Bigfoot, it's gonna be more like a human with long arms. So you're gonna kind of get the impression of it being an ape. and then you've got like a muzzle on it with sharp teeth. So, I could see it being like, oh shit, that's a bear head. But also, you look at it from a different way. You could be like, oh, that's a wolf head on an ape body. But Warilla isn't as cool as Bearilla. So here we are.
Yeah. Werebear's probably a good one, but I'm sure that's like a Pokemon or something, right?
I don't know about a Pokemon, but it's definitely what you turn into in the third level of Altered Beast.
It sure is. So why would they be covering this up? It can't be just to preserve the tourism.
Yeah, I think it's either one, just to keep the existence of the treaty, and by extension the existence of the Wolfmen, to keep them a secret, or it's an agreement that we have with them where like we say, so long as you guys stay here, you can kill who you want, just don't come out of here to kill people. Or it's even darker and they're like multi-dimensional beings, and we've got some weird agreement with dimensional dog monsters. They're the fucking hounds of Tindalos, Mateo.
What do you think about, since it's got such a similar description to Bigfoot and it having a dog-like appearance, maybe this is a feral Bigfoot?
Maybe it's a Bigfoot with lycanthropy. Like that's what happens when a Bigfoot fights a werewolf and gets bit by a werewolf. It becomes a fucking Bigfoot werewolf thing, and it only roams on full moons. And if you see it outside of that, it's just your typical run of the mill Bigfoot. But on those full moon days, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah. What if it's an offspring?
Oh man, a Bigfoot bangs a dogman?
Yeah, dude. A lonely Bigfoot finds redemption and a chance at love.
Oh shit. It sounds like we got some new Bigfoot erotica to write out.
Can you imagine that person trolling so many people who go to buy that book, and it's like the real explanation for the Land Between the Lakes monster?
Yeah, that's what it ends up being. It's not erotica. This is the real life story of the beast that lives between the lakes.
But after this book, you'll call it The Monster That Lives Between the Sheets.
Oh, shit. You'll never look at Doggy Style the same way again, baby.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.